He was a Nuyorican kid with a trombone and a determination to make it big. 30 million records later, he's a salsa legend, the one and only Willie Colon. I'm Maria Hinojosa. This is One on One. Willie Colon, the legend of salsa. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
It's great to have you. So, you know, what's interesting is that I was preparing for this interview, and so in New York, I was flipping through the radio dial, and I was like, I can't find salsa playing on the radio in New York City.
Yeah, it's sad but true, yeah.
I mean, there was a heyday of salsa. It was everything about New York City, and yet, I mean, is it gone?
Well, I'd say in the States it's really been reduced. Now, most of our work lately has been like throughout, you know, international.
Japan,
in South America, even Mexico. I go to Mexico maybe 8 times a year.
And you're like huge.
Yeah,
Everybody's Diego Willie Colon.
Yeah, we play El Zócalo and you know, really big things. And it's going strong there. I mean, in Colombia, you'll have 10 radio stations playing salsa 24/7.
Like real salsa?
Real salsa, the old-time stuff. I think that with anything that is like commercially successful, you know, what happens is it has to be, the corporations have to reduce it into some kind of formula, and it loses a lot. I think that's why the people have lost interest in it, because the corporations tend to want the very conservative, and two, they want something that's very dependable. So, you know, they would go by "Don't kill a winning formula," and I think that the spark that really made salsa what it was the competition, and you know, the music always trying to evolve. There was always there was a social message in salsa. It was like a platform.
Was it? Well, I wonder about that, because I was thinking about the fact that in the late 70s, early 80s, when I was in New York, and you know, the phenomenal album Siembra, and everybody would listen to that album, and I thought, but this is such a political album. How were Willie Colon and Rubén Blades able to do such a political album with a music that was commercially successful? Making
the record wasn't about, hey, we're going to have a big seller. We knew what we wanted to say, and the other part was there already. I think that, you know, especially in New York, what we called salsa had a lot of political roots, underpinnings. I mean, it was evolving at the same time. I remember we'll be having the jam sessions out on the street, and on the tube, you know, Martin Luther King is, you know, marching into Selma. You know, we felt we were part of that, and in a way we were, because when we would have our jam sessions and the police would come, you know, and for illegal assembly, you know, when did the Jim Crow laws officially end? In '64? Something like that, you know.
So you were getting, wait a second, so you're playing on the streets of the Bronx,
yeah, we're
hanging out with your congas, y qué sé yo, and you're saying the police would come and say, we're taking you in?
Yeah, no, they'd stop. You know, this is disturbing the peace, illegal assembly, blah, blah, blah. And okay, we'd stop, and, you know, they'd leave, and we'd start again. And when they come back, they'd be a little PO'd, you know, and they'd say, okay, well, now we're taking one of your drums, you know.
You're kidding?
Yeah. And then the next time, and now I'm going to bang one of you guys on the head. And we just kept going back. So, you know, the music was kind of like a form of civil disobedience to a certain extent. We were spread out all over the city also, and, you know, pretty isolated. And the dances were also like meetings, you know, where you see, like, boom, you see all of these Latinos. I saw them, like, in Roseland, these dances at Roseland, where the Mexicanos were doing the same thing.
Right now in New York,
yeah, like finding themselves.
Right.
And I think, you know, that's another social power that the music had, because there was no other kind of platform or magnet to be able to assemble us.
It's interesting, because I don't think that most people think of salsa as having that kind of revolutionary, underground kind of position. I think people remember salsa as the big hits, the big stars, and that it was commercially extraordinarily successful.
Well, you know, it organically, it kind of distilled itself into this, what Ruben and I did, and you know, it was always there, and it was just perfectly right. You know, we had the right vocabulary, and we had the right kind of complaints to throw into it, and you know, it all just made so much sense.
So when you were, how did the politics get involved in the music? And where did your concientización, your kind of political awareness
my
come from?
concientización comes from my grandmother. All of my grandparents came over in the 20s, okay? So my parents were born here, and I was born here, but still, you know, we were still illegal immigrants as far as...
Even though you were Puerto Ricans
we were
with
Puerto
American
Ricans,
citizenship.
We were American citizens since 1917.
Right.
But, you know, that didn't mean anything. Half of them, the guys, the cops and stuff, they didn't know where Puerto Rico is, and they didn't care. We would, you know, what they used to tell us is, hey, you're just a different kind of you know... The
N-word.
The N-word. And, you know, and that... We started to identify a lot with the African American community. I mean, and early on, we were doing Latin music in English, and boogaloo. We'd be doing boogaloo, and it was, you know, because there was just. I remember when I was a kid, I used to have to go to school through the backyards with a group. You know, we used to have to go to the backyards because we couldn't walk down the streets without getting beat up. And it was me, a couple of black kids, a couple of other Latinos, and you know, and that's the way it was then, you know.
So this idea of what you were doing when you were bringing, and I love the way that you say that like your memory of music is Rafael Hernandez with James Brown, James Bond, and you know, a little bit of Carlos Gardel. I mean, it was, you brought together this whole other kind of radical aspect into this music of salsa.
Yeah.
Right? But one of the other things that you were doing that was very controversial was changing rhythms and beats.
Yeah, that's true.
What is it called? Reversing the clave.
Reversing the clave.
So a clave, because there might be a lot of people who are watching this who don't know what the clave is. So what is the clave?
A clave is a 2-bar phrase, and it's either 3-2 or 2-3. It's either... That one starts on the 2, and
so bum 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 bum.
Right. So it's and if it starts on the 2, it's
dun, dun, dun.
Okay. And if it starts on the 3, it's And if you play them together, it's
oh my God! I've never had that. Do that again. That was amazing. So it's got a totally different swing to it. It's like
yeah. So that's why I used to hear it, and I used to be able to flip it around like that.
That was extraordinarily controversial.
Yeah, it was. Some of the old timers used to like their socks used to go up and down because they're telling me, they'd come and say, "Look, you can't do that." But I saw when I used to do that the dancers. Some of the dancers would love it because they're doing the same step through the whole song, and all of a sudden it feels like they're doing something different because I got them dancing on a different beat now. You know. So we got a lot of fans. We don't know why. I know that Hector Lavoe was just like Lenny Bruce on the stage.
He was a kid though. When he ended up singing for you on your first album, it was because you didn't want to sing, and Hector starts singing with you. And what was that collaboration like? Because Hector Lavoe now is going to become a big national name. There's a movie coming out about Hector, like 2 movies coming out about Hector Lavoe.
Hector Lavoe is more than a legend. Now he's like a myth. You know, he's just...
Is that weird for you?
It is. It is because, you know, he's like getting so big, you know, and now I'm going like, hey, I knew him, you know. You know, how about me, you know? And you know, he's not going to get old. He's always going to be the same age, and, you know, I'm getting old. I'm mortal. So there's something really perverse about the whole thing.
Some people may not know that Hector Lavoe had a difficult life, did lots of drugs, tried to kill himself once jumping off of a building, survived it.
That's the stuff that he's most remembered. It's a very, very tragic life. But the thing is that when he first came over, he was just like a sweet, clean-cut country boy, you know, a peasant boy, you know, with an incredible voice, a great sense of humor, very, very intelligent, very funny. And you don't see, nobody has been able to really bring that out and tell that story about Hector. I hope that happens someday.
Part of what happened with Hector was that he got sick, he got AIDS.
He died of AIDS.
And then you started working with Rubén Blades.
Right.
And you and Rubén have had some reunions, but right now things are not good between you and Rubén Blades, and I'm sure that anyone who's watching this, their heart is breaking. How can it be that Willie Colon and Rubén Blades are not hooked up?
It comes down to respect and money and stuff like that, and money spoils things.
But isn't that just incredibly sad when you're looking at the fact that you've got this musical movement that both of you were a part of, that people want to hold on to? I mean, right now when you do, you're not performing a lot, but when you do perform in Mexico and in those places, huge audience response, right? People are hungry for this.
Yeah.
Because what's that hunger about?
The hunger is, there's a universal message, and I think that the music itself is like a reconciliation of so many things. It's the reconciliation of the past and the present. It's a reconciliation of the three roots of the Asian or the indigenous roots and the African roots and the European. All of these things together. I mean, it just makes so much sense. I mean, it's weird that, we've played in, we can play in Mexico, where the people, it's not a really tropical town or whatever, and after a while, it just takes them a little while to understand it. I'm telling you, at the first couple of songs, they're like, what is this? And by the end of the thing, yeah, I get it, and they're into it. I mean, and I've played at a place in Colombia, these black aldeas, where they're like African towns, where the people come in canoes, and and we play, and they get it. And then we come and we've played. I played Reagan's inaugural. I played 2 of Clinton's inaugurals, and
I had forgotten about the Reagan inaugural.
I did it because of the historic importance of having a Latino play, at the thing.
But you would not be playing at President Bush's inauguration. I mean, there won't be another one, but you wouldn't.
I have to be careful what I say because you have the. Homeland Security, and you can get in some of the Patriot Act to get into all kind of trouble.
Willie Colon deported for saying he won't play on.
I wouldn't play. It's unpatriotic.
When you look at your life in terms of politics, you have the politics you say came from this kind of 1960s, civil rights. Now you're doing politics on a different level. You're involved with Bloomberg. You ran for office twice in New York City for Congress, for public advocate, as a Democrat.
Yes.
And then you came out and you supported Mayor Bloomberg in New York City, a Republican.
I think Mike Bloomberg is one of the most fair, straight-ahead guys. That he doesn't have anything to prove. You don't have to fear that he's going to sell out for a couple of, coins, gold coins. And that, he's got it over a lot of guys that are still really hungry out there that I, wouldn't.
Does he dance salsa?
No, but now since he's taken Spanish lessons, he will not speak to me in English. And it's rough sometimes.
You are not planning on running for office again? That's
well,
kind of
I wanted to take this opportunity to announce my candidacy.
You're forming an exploratory committee.
For the presidency of the United States. Okay.
And the platform would be what? I mean, what is right now, what is the thing that is top of your list in terms of your concerns?
I think the main thing is energy. We have to stop burning fossil fuels. We have the capability. We throw away so much produce, corn, to use biomass. The diesel engine was designed by Rudolph Diesel to burn peanut oil. And the petroleum cartel, or whatever you want to call it, changed it, made an oil that the diesel could burn. Every diesel engine out there could run on corn oil or, vegetable oil. And, it doesn't have, all of the contaminants and stuff like that. And aside from that, it's just too many people are dying for oil these days.
Okay, you've got the political stuff going on, your concerns about energy. At the same time, you've got this kind of, I don't know, would you call it a resurgence of salsa in places? You've got the Fania label that is now re-recording, digitizing all of the songs that had basically been locked in some faraway warehouse closet in New York City for years. So will salsa come back? Can it come back? If when you say that it's more than just a beat, it's a concept?
That's what I say. It's a concept, and yes, it is coming back because the young kids, they'll listen to what they're used to is salsa now, and then they'll listen to some of the old stuff, and they go, man, you know. And even us, you know, we're somewhere in the middle because now what we're recording nowadays, isn't it? When we do those really old shows and we bring out those old charts, it's the detail and on the music and whatnot is so impressive, you know, that it doesn't die easy.
And this notion of salsa as something that can cross borders. I mean, I remember when I got to New York as a Mexican in 1979, and I didn't get salsa at all. I had grown up in Chicago. But listening to salsa and being in rooms where there were Colombians, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Dominicans, Argentinians, and we were all listening to that music, it really was something that brought people across borders. This notion of crossing borders is important to you?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think that we are not monolithic, and we need as many, mechanisms to unite us, because I've spent the last 40 years of my life traveling through the Americas, Latin America, and it just takes a couple of days, man, and, you know, I feel like we're home. We are so much alike, you know, and the differences that we have been probably, you know, more manufactured to keep us apart. And I think that the fate of all of Latin America depends very much on what we, the Latinos here in the States, do, how we conduct ourselves, and I think that the music is a good instrument too.
Do you think that unity is happening? Do you see it happening when you?
Yeah, it is. You know, it's got its little bumps and bruises. You know, people have to all, for the better good. It's hard to understand that, but you know, when it works on your behalf, then you're able to understand it. Like what happened with the marches and stuff like that. When people that
you're talking about the immigrant rights marches,
marches, right? You know, and I don't want to repeat what. Let's say what immigrants say about Puerto Ricans and blah, blah, but a lot of people that weren't really involved by the immigrant issue, just because there was Latinos involved or whatever, they felt some partial, like an ownership, you know, that it affected them, and I think that that comes by emphasizing cultural, you know, what we have in common.
Before 2000, you ended up moving your family to Mexico.
That's right, yeah.
And I remember thinking, Willie Colon, the Puerto Rican from the Bronx, living in Mexico.
Yeah.
You had a club there, extraordinarily successful.
Yeah.
And so that experience of being in Mexico, it changed you?
I thought that's what it was going to be like, and that's what you know, it's what I made. I made, it wasn't that hard. You know, people are people, and if you deal on them, Mexico City is not that, you know, different from New York or from the Bronx, you know. Yeah. And what the good thing about being from the Bronx is that wherever you go, we could be in the worst neighborhood in Colombia, and one guy, mira, that Bronx. Oh, that Bronx. Oh, you know, right away, you know, it's
cachet from the Bronx.
Yeah, cachet. So I thought that was very interesting. I felt very proud about that.
Part of what you did, I mean, you've had to pay some dues for the fact that you have been a musician who has been so politically outspoken. You were saying that there was a time when you wrote a song against Pinochet when he was in power in Chile,
right.
That got you blacklisted. It's a song that we never got a chance to hear because it was blacklisted.
Yeah, I wrote a song about Pinochet. It was, you know, kind of a satire about him, and I got a lot of flack from the brass at that time, RCA. And they equated my attacking Pinochet with my being a communist, because Pinochet was also a communist fighter, you know, he fought against communism. And So it really, I insisted. They said, you have to take it off. I said, no, it stays on. So I won that battle, but I lost the war because I went to RCA Legal and I said, First Amendment, blah, blah, blah. And they did a token release of about 20,000 when I usually used to do 200,000 out of the box.
So when you look at what's happening with Latin music now, first I want you to talk about, do you think that there is, in fact, a music that encaptures who we are and what we're living right now as a Latin peoples in this country? Is there one? And of course, some people might say, well, gee, that music would be reggaeton. And what's your thought about reggaeton?
Well, you know what? I would say the same thing because reggaeton is almost virgin at this point. Reggaeton comes out from under the radar, from a lot of different basements and stuff, from kids that, you know, marginalized kids, and it has all of that defiance. It has all of that nasty, dirty kind of funk that the kids want to hear. It's not been sanitized. It's not been made politically correct. It's not conservative at all.
Do you like reggaeton?
Some of it. Some of it is just nasty for the sake of being nasty, but
the rhythm of reggaeton.
The rhythm is great. A lot of the lyrics are very good. The way that the cadence is, the way they not only they rhyme it, but they're doing all of these polyrhythms and stuff. You know, so I think it's very good. And the reason that it was able to be so successful is because it's not a corporate product.
But do you think, I mean, you have so much experience in the music business. You talk about the fact that once you've got corporations involved, once it becomes commercialized, it changes.
I predict that it's going to change. You know, once it changes hands. Once the kids that own it now sell it to the corporations, it's going to change.
And you feel that that's inevitable?
It's inevitable, yeah.
And so then, you know, when you think about the future of Latin music, I mean, you're thinking about retiring now. Mm-hmm. You've said that you want to do your final tour. So the future of Latin music goes where here?
You know, technology, you know, is also creates different, you know, obstacles and opportunities. And like today, the reason reggaeton is such success is because everybody, you know, you have like these MTV kind of shows. Even, you know, from Lima, Peru to, you know, the Bronx, everybody's got a cell phone, everybody's got their little MP3s, and, you know, that helped it explode. By the same token, there's before, like in the 80s, in order to do an album, you had to go into the studio and you had to have like $2 million and have an SSL console and all of that stuff, and that pretty much left, you know, independent producers out. But now with a Macintosh and, you know, you can do.
So are you hopeful when you look at what's happening, for example, in New York City, the heart of salsa, of the salsa movement, where you had your base? Yeah. Are you hopeful when you look at what's? Well,
I happen to know that there's a lot of records being made in the basements out there now.
And so?
And so there's going to be a lot of product out there, and all we need is a Jerry Masucci type guy to come and help promote them.
And you wouldn't do this? You wouldn't at this point in your life say?
I'm keeping my options open.
So possibility.
It's a possibility.
I mean, because, you know, you could, in fact, if you wanted to, take something like that and have your influence finally as an owner of this kind of music. But you're feeling what? It's time to get on the boat? Time to take off? Time to relax?
Well, for a little while, I don't want to do the wall-to-wall touring anymore, you know. Really, I've been everywhere, and I need to, you know, I need to kind of refresh myself, and I need to tell a different story.
And part of that is that you're writing a book.
Yeah.
You just said to me before we came out, it's a tell-all. It's going to say everything.
Yeah.
Well, what are we going to learn? What is the tell-all? What's the, you know, what's the behind-the-scenes headline that we don't know about what happened with your life in salsa?
Well, you know, there's the cliche, you know, of the from rags to riches kind of thing, and, you know, or from rags to almost riches, you know.
Working on it?
Working on it. There's a lot of you know, how we hear about it all the time, you know, how the records get played and
oh, you mean, so you're going to reveal a little bit of how the because everybody's talked about how there were, you know, the little mafia situation in terms of getting salsa music out. So it's...
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that. I also like to talk about politics in New York, you know, and you know, how that works.
And so when you think about the future, does the future for you look like take a little break, write your book, and then get back in and start playing again? Or does it look like, you know what, taking a break and I'm going to let the young people now take over and have their say?
I don't know. It depends, you know, how I feel. What is it? Man proposes and God disposes. I'm just going to go, you know, I've never been a big planner. I've been mostly kind of an intuitive person, and that's the way it's going to go. All
right, well, we'll stay in tune with your intuitiveness then, Willie Colon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
For more information about this program, visit our website.